Hey everyone, and welcome to Practically an Artist. This week I'm talking to my friend Daniel Loveland. He is a video creator in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and also a very talented photographer. We talk a little bit about how we got our start in doing creative imagery and how kind of different paths. We talk a little bit about living in Los Angeles and how that experience was for each of us. And then we go down a little bit of rabbit hole talking about YouTube, personal branding, media, understanding social media culture and how that's affected advertising and YouTube personalities. And so this is a fun one. We go a little bit all over the place, but it was a really good conversation. So I hope you guys enjoy it. All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Daniel.
Seth, thank you so much. I've been looking forward to this for months.
By months, you mean the last 7 days since you knew it existed?
Yeah. I listened to your last week's podcast to prep myself. I feel like I'm not going to do as good of a job as Jake, but I'm here and I'm ready to rumble.
You promised less pee breaks than Jake. So.
Yeah, less pee breaks. I didn't pee before I got in here. That was a very bold move, but I think it'll work. I don't think you're going to have to make any edits. I think you're going to be able to cut this all the way through. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Let's go from the beginning.
You just added your own. No, we're not starting over. This is it. We're live.
Okay.
I've
never been on a podcast before. So.
Explain to the people who you are, what you do.
Yeah, so...
You got to eat that mic, boy.
I don't know what I do right now. I went to school to be a photographer, and I really pursued that for a long time, and I ended up taking a job as a filmmaker, even though I'd only done a few videos before. So I kind of learned video on the spot, the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
And then now I've been doing a lot more directing just as I've worked with bigger teams, but I'm still just like a creative student, I guess. I love learning about photography still and video, and still love doing lighting setups and lighting interiors, and I should probably nail down more who I am so I can market myself better. But right now, I just love being a creative and love working with people. That's where I get the most joy.
Yeah, I think that's always the hard part. Kobe and I talked about this a little bit a couple weeks ago, but I think a lot of us fall into being jacks of all trades just because we like the learning part. And sometimes that can be both a blessing and a distraction, to where you get to the point where you're like, oh man, I'm not really good at anything. I'm decent at a lot of things, and then I'm kind of good at this thing, but I'm having more fun doing this thing right now. And you can get a little spread thin with your talents. It could be hard to focus down sometimes, or hard to just identify what you are. How do I tell people what I do?
I would say that does work negatively towards you when you're a freelancer and you're trying to market yourself as one thing. But when it comes to the burnout that I see a lot of people experiencing, I think being a jack of all trades can really keep you from burning out a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I work full time on a team, and there's some days where I'm running audio, some days I'm a DP, some days I'm directing, some days I'm editing. And I think that really keeps me interested in what's happening in front of me, and it's not the same thing over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely pros and cons with anything. I think you have to know your way around it, and you have to know yourself well. You have to know your market well too. You need to know what's going to work for the market that you're in.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because with Jake we got to hear a lot about how being a freelancer in a small market, but with a very specific skill set and a very specific toolkit and a very defined position, can be a blessing in a lot of ways, because if you prove yourself, then you're the go-to guy. How have you found that working differently? And you and I both have similar experience freelancing in that we sometimes it's an editing job, sometimes it's a full shoot edit, everything. Sometimes you're just coming on as a grip for the weekend. How do you feel like that's played out for you, and figuring out how to market yourself in a small market?
Yeah, so I'm really blessed that I work full time doing video 9 to 5, so I get a paycheck every 2 weeks, and I don't have to worry about where my next freelance money is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really given me the opportunity to pick and choose what jobs I want to take. And there's sometimes where I want to go on set, even if it's as a PA, I want to go on set just so I can meet someone that is going to be on set and I can network with them. It's also give me the opportunity to try different roles and wear different hats on smaller sets and figure out what I do and I don't like and figure out what I am good at.
Yeah.
Instead of being thrown into something and screwing up and never getting a call back, I can definitely take more low pressure jobs and use that as like almost an experiment and see how I like that experience a lot of the time.
Yeah, and it's a nice way to be able to keep diversifying your skill sets, because you can say yes to something that's maybe low budget, but it's something different that you've been wanting to try, and it's a little bit low pressure to be like, oh, I've only done like a month's worth of 3D tutorials, but I'll take this 3D job and it might take me twice as long to do it than what I'm getting paid because I'm not that good at it yet. But by the time I get through, I'll have this new skill unlock that I can market.
Yeah, I've definitely...
How difficult is it to find clients in a small?
Oh, man. I think it depends what you would consider a client. I think a lot of people are hesitant to take a job less than $5,000. But then a lot of people are hesitant to take a job more than $1,000. I think depending on what you're willing to put your rate at and depending on what experience you want to put yourself through on a job, you can get clients in anything. For me, I'm kind of taking jobs as they come to me, and I'm in the opportunity where I can turn down jobs if I want. So right now, I'm not taking anything that I don't want to do because I don't have to do it. And I know one day that's not always going to be the case. Like I said, I'm full-time somewhere right now. So if I want to take my Friday, Saturday and work for 2 days on set, I can do that. Or if I want to take 2 days and just stay at home and like rejuvenate myself, I can do that. I think where we live is different because I know you talked about this with Jake too. Like I used to live in LA and you also used to live in LA. I think in Tulsa, there's a lot of money, but people are hesitant to spend that money. You really have to
prove yourself.
You have to figure out how to get people to spend money, where in bigger markets, it's different. People don't have a lot of money, but they want like the biggest, best production.
Yeah.
So in Tulsa, you're dealing with a lot of, not just Tulsa, maybe I would say majority of the Midwest. You're dealing with a lot of people. It's their first time dealing with a legitimate production, and you have to navigate your way around that, and you have to build a lot of trust for yourself. And you're lucky enough, some companies might have like a chief marketing person where they kind of talk the talk and they know what they're dealing with. But if you're willing to put yourself out there and deal with first-time clients and figure out how to sell to them and figure out how to answer the questions and go back and forth on edits, like if you're willing to put yourself through that and you're willing to teach a company what it means to have a production, then I think that's a client for life. But I think there's a lot of people that are hesitant to do that. They want to lean on the same go-to clients. I'm speaking from a little bit of experience, but I'm also speaking from just what I've seen has worked with people. They've built a relationship with brands, and they've built that trust over a period of a long time. And now those are their go-to clients, and they're more willing to spend $25 to $50K on a project because they trust the person they're working with.
Yeah, I was talking about that with my in-laws a little bit this weekend, where I was just kind of trying to explain how hard it is to sell, a person or a company or a brand, especially in our region, on the value of something that they just don't really understand. And I think the creative technical language has definitely saturated the world a lot more than it used to. But a lot of people still don't understand like how something translates to like, how is this 40 hours worth of work? You just click a few buttons, right? And we even deal with that at work too, where people just don't really understand what the execution translates to for, what the value is, translates to a lot of hours that they really can't wrap their heads around. Like they just don't understand like, this video, this quality is going to equal 60 hours. And they're like, well, how in the world is that 60 hours? It's like, it is between editing and getting a 3-man crew out there.
Yeah. I was working with someone on a pitch a couple months ago, and they were unsure if they wanted audio or not for this project. They really didn't have a clear direction. And I was explaining to them the price difference that makes having audio or not, and their mind just could not wrap their heads around that it was going to be at least $600 more for the project because we were going to roll audio on some of the shots. And I'm like, I'll have to get someone out here for 2 days that knows what they're doing. They have to bring their own equipment, and they have to be good at their job, and they have to be trustworthy. And like, that's not cheap. And as I've started working with like bigger and bigger crews, it is ridiculous how much money that you can spend on a project. And now I see that when I have to deal with like contractors in my personal life, like people coming to my house, like a plumber. Well, no wonder it costs $100 for them to drive to your house and park their truck in their driveway. It's because they have an overhead and they have like 40 employees.
Yeah, well, they just spent $15 on gas to get there.
And in my mind, I'm like, you didn't do anything. You just drove out here. But I'm not considering the fact that he has thousands of dollars worth of tools in his truck, and he has a college education or tech school education, and his employer has to pay their bills and he has to pay him bills. Like, business is not cheap.
No. Yeah, there's a lot of hidden costs that people don't think about. That's funny. I never really thought about, comparing it to like how easy it is to get annoyed at. We've had that too with contractors at our place. Like when our plumbing went out and they just did not want to fix it because they didn't want to pay for it, because it translated to probably like $3,000 or $4,000 worth of work that because it was under warranty they had to do for free. And I think that, it's a little easier to tell people like, why does this plumbing thing cost this much? But trying to explain like, well, I'm going to have to edit this for 25 hours. And they're like, well, why? It's only, it's a 1-day shoot. And it's like, well, it's complicated, and I'm going to have to go through and mix all this audio. That's going to take me a day, and that's 8 hours right there. And I'm going to have to, color grade this whole thing because we shot it on a nice camera because you wanted it to look nice.
Yeah, that's what I mean, though. Like, I think if you're willing to have those conversations and be patient with clients and teach them what their money is going towards and teach them that they're actually paying for like a good service and an actual product, I think that builds trust and that builds a relationship with the proper client, and you're more willing to get them to come back to you every time because they trust you, especially like if it's their first time.
Yeah. That's something I've always been impressed with is you. You're much better at that networking side of things than I am. I hate it. I'm so terrible at it. Like, that's why I always have probably tended towards being at an agency or a company, is because I always have like an office manager or somebody above me to handle the stuff that I just like do not have the mental bandwidth for. When I do freelance projects, that's always the part that just makes me want to pull my hair out, is the like explaining and multiple quoting and going through like chains of emails where they're like, well, why do we need this? And you're like, good Lord, can we just like move on, please? I'm definitely more of an executor. You're much better of a networker and a planner than me. I don't know if that's a natural thing or if that's an acquired skill.
It's interesting you say that, because I feel like I'm really bad at being a producer on things. There are definitely jobs where I have to be that person, but then I still I struggle to keep a calendar. I struggle to reply to emails on time. Like, that's not what I'm good at. I love being a producer on projects where I get to cast a vision and I get to talk about a brand story with them and talk about what's important to them. But as far as like the nitty gritty, I am so bad at that sort of stuff. And I want to get better at it because I want to serve people better. But also there are times where you have to bring someone in that's like, okay, this is your strength. It's worth paying you to do this because it makes this a lot easier and it makes people happier. And it makes me less pissed off at the client when I have to deal with them.
Yeah. I've always been tempted to buy one of those online, like get your personal assistant for 5 hours a week for like people on Fiverr and stuff. It's like, if I had that, my life would honestly probably be in a lot better situation. Cause like half the time my wife is my personal planner and she doesn't have time to do that all the time. I'm the same. Like I will look at a text message and then forget about it for 5 days and then be scrolling back through and be like, oh crap, I thought I replied to that.
Isn't that funny how some people's creative brains work? Like, I will rush to getting on a set and building lights and building camera and like working for 12 hours. That comes so natural and so easy to me. But sitting down on a Friday morning, which is when I do most of my admin stuff, sitting down on a Friday morning and doing that is like pulling teeth for me sometimes. I have to put myself in the right environment. I have to have like my coffee. I have to have music just to freaking reply to an email or get calendar requests sent out.
Oh,
but
I'm
like
the same.
I can be on set every single day and thrive.
100%. Like I could sit there and like stare at the same Da Vinci window for like 5 hours and be completely enthralled and just have my music blaring and be just like tweaking the same slider for 4.5, 5 hours and be completely into it. And then if I just have to sit down for 20 minutes and catch up on email, I like find ways to avoid it at all costs because I just hate it.
I think for me, that's the part of production that I don't like is like that admin type stuff. But I really do love the people side. I love talking through an idea with a client. Like maybe they have an idea already, but helping them flesh that out and helping them cast their vision. I really love that side of it, like the people side. And I love serving them in a way that I'm helping solve their problems. But like, I might not respond to their emails for a few days.
I forget to respond to my own family's texts many a time. So I'm just as bad, if not worse. Let's talk a little bit. It's touched on that we both had our own little LA experiences earlier. Tell me a little bit about like how you ended up in LA for a time and how that experience kind of, shaped what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I went to school for photography at a tech school in Oklahoma, and I knew I was going to have to do an internship on one of my last semesters, and I was just like, how big can I dream? And I reached out to my like all-time favorite photographer who had a background in skateboarding, which is kind of where I come from, and he was working his way into fashion at the time. And I reached out to him and ended up just building a short relationship over email, like asking questions, asking for critiques, and then giving him praise on projects that I thought looked good and I liked. And then one day, I would not suggest doing this, but his phone number was in his email signature. And one day I was like, I'm just going to call him. He's never talked to me on the phone right now, but I'm going to call him and ask if I can be his intern. So I called him. I said, hey, I know you've never worked with interns, like your wife is your partner, but I have this opportunity. I want to do it. And he's like, let me think on it. I'll call you back. And I was like, he's never going to get back to me ever. Like I ruined that relationship. What am I doing? He called me back like 3 hours later and he's like, all right, so when can you start? And that was really awesome. So I moved to Santa Monica for like 4 months and worked with him every day doing some skate stuff, some fashion stuff. And then I was working for him when he got a rep. So that was really cool seeing that process of him becoming like kind of like a big wig photographer. And now he's crushing it, doing a lot of really big stuff based on projects that I helped him with 4 years ago. Like, I remember him talking, we talked in the car one day. He was like, I want to get into like the beverage market, like beers and things like that. And I was like, that's oversaturated. Like everyone is shooting beers. They don't need another photographer. Well,
right. I mean, there's a new beer commercial every month. And
exactly.
It's probably the same 5 people shooting them.
Well, we talked about that a few years ago, and then he just did the new NFL can campaign for Bud Light. Like he shot all the NFL teams like cans for Bud Light. So I got to see him come through a lot of that. So anyways, I'm out there for like 4 months working with him and a few other people and really just learning how to network and just how to not like blow it in certain situations. And I was there. I knew like I had done all I could in LA, and I wanted to take what I learned out there and bring it back home. So I came back, walked across the stage at my graduation, but I didn't graduate.
Same.
Yeah, I don't have my diploma yet. I'm working on it.
I do have mine. My parents would have murdered me if I didn't have mine by now.
And I just ended up taking it to a church. I was blessed to be full-time on staff, and then also just start working with little clients here and there and figuring out what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and really learning how to be in charge of a team. When it came to being on set sometimes. Like, I think that is a skill that you either have it or you don't. And I think photographers do a really good job of translating to being a director, because there's so much communication happening with the photographer and the lighting person or the model or whatever. So whenever you get on a bigger set with video and you have a bunch of grips and hands and things like that, I think it translates a little bit better. So I'm definitely still like learning every day, and there's things I learned 4 years ago that I'm still like fully comprehending. Like I'll see myself do something on set and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that day when we had to do that. So I wasn't out there for near long enough to get the full like LA experience, but I was there long enough to kind of understand how the industry works and understand that if you can be a full-time photographer in the Midwest, that is a huge blessing, because it is way harder when you're on the West Coast, way harder.
Yeah. I would kind of agree with that too. I think I had a similar experience. I was there quite a bit longer. I was there for 3 years, but I think that sometimes you can kind of feel that, okay, I've kind of gotten what I can get out of this place. And maybe that's part of my bug, where I liked to move around and I like to be doing new things, but also I think you can kind of tell when maybe you've tapped out and you're like, okay, I've like learned what I can learn here, but I don't think this is my forever vibe. I don't want to necessarily settle into this system. I maybe need to like take these skills and apply them somewhere else where I'll be a little bit happier. And I think, you know, you kind of have to figure that out on your own. There's not really a way to tell what works for you until you try stuff. But I always look back at my time in LA as like an invaluable speed primer on getting caught up on many things that I didn't learn in high school because I just didn't have anything available, and YouTube wasn't at the level that it's at now. So I was so behind on technical knowledge. I had a lot of drive and a lot of joy out of making things, but no base in any like art training or any technical training. And so I got a really quick primer on that, like to the point where I was thrown into a class week 1 of school where I was just like, here's 3-point lighting, here's golden ratio, here's all these things. They're just throwing everything at you, and you just kind of have to absorb it. And then they're just like, all right, go make stuff. That's how you get a grade. And you have to do that for 3 years. And that's a good way to, you know, it's a little bit of the, what's Quentin Tarantino say? Like, you don't have to go to film school, just go make things. But at the same time, like, I don't know if you necessarily learn, you can now easier than you could then even, but I don't know if you'll learn everything without a little bit of help.
Yeah. I mean, I went to school and I was able to step into a giant studio with equipment and lights, and I was able to take really bad photos in a giant studio and really nice equipment for months, years even. And you can't do that. Like if I wanted to rent a giant cyc wall and a big lighting package, it would cost me thousands of dollars for one day of shooting. Whereas when you're in school, I really feel like a lot, like you said, a lot of things you can learn online, basically all things that you would learn in film school or photo school or whatever, but you're going to be able to surround yourself with a community of creatives that are growing at the same rate as you, and you're going to be able to push yourself and be competitive, and also have assistants help you for free. Like if your buddies help you out, you can help them out for free. But it's just like being in that setting and not having to pay an arm and a leg for it or try to have a client pay for all of it was invaluable. Like never in my professional life have I had to light a set with 7 lights, but I had, or light a photo with 7 lights, but it was one of my projects in school. And I'm like, I'm really glad that I got to do that for an assignment and like kind of blow it a little bit, because if a client asked me to do that without that experience, it would be terrible. Like it'd be a huge mistake. So you're really paying in college for the experience of being able to blow it and being able to have critiques on your work. Like you don't get that in the everyday world. You're not going to get a call back if you blow it. And in school, there's that little bit of cushion. I don't think school is for everyone.
No, not at all.
But like for me, I think I would not have thrived as much if I was just went straight to freelancing, because there was a lot of things that I needed told by an instructor and not by a client.
Yeah, you almost need that incubation period where you have like the ability to just make some crappy stuff and be like, oh, well, that's okay.
But there are things I think that that schools don't teach. I don't know if there's a way to teach this, but just not blowing it and being a cool person.
It's
like,
huge.
No, seriously.
No, it is. It's
I am more likely to hire someone that is really cool on set and like really vibes with my team. If they're willing to ask questions and learn when they're there, then I'm going to bring them back. But someone who's like kind of a jerk and thinks they're a know-it-all, like I don't want to be with them all day. I don't want to pay to be with them all day. Like if you bring someone on and you really, like you said, like you incubate them, then you're going to help develop someone that you're going to want to deal with all the time. And you just can't learn that in school. You just have to go out into the world and have people tell you that you need to chill out, or have people tell you that you're being a douche, or you have to learn the hard way that you're a know-it-all.
You're going to get booted from a project at some point, and then you're going to fall flat on your face. I mean, I think that is huge. And I mean, I even remember my first semester in film school being so intimidated by people that showed up and like they went to a really cool arts high school in California or somewhere, and they had already, shot 5 short films on a red by the time they showed up to school. And I was like, chilling with my little handy cam, making like remakes of YouTube videos and compilations of like shots mimicking things I'd seen on Vimeo. I had no freaking clue what I was doing, and they show up and know all the terms. I've already been on set a bunch, but the ones that were graceful with that did really well, and some of them are still doing really well. But the ones that I remember being kind of like, I was like, oh, that guy's kind of a douche about it. I don't think most of them are even working in video anymore, and so I think being a good person goes a long way, if that makes any sense. And
definitely makes
also
sense,
surrounding yourself with people that make you feel comfortable and creative and you actually enjoy making stuff with is huge. You can make yourself really miserable really fast if you're making good stuff with bad people.
Yeah, I think that's like the classic job interview question, right? Is how do you work with a team? And I think everyone wants to say, oh yeah, of course. And I think in the industry that we're in, there's like especially the time period that we're in now, everyone has their own brand. Everyone's speaking for themselves, and they're about what they're about. And that's totally cool. But you have to understand when you're working, you're still going to be working with a team every single time. And you have to understand what you're good at and when you're not good at in a team setting.
Yeah. So that's a good little transition right there. Let's talk a little bit about personal brand, because I know we both have our little like niches on the internet that we both hate watch and love watch and have some opinions about consumption on like Instagram and YouTube and stuff. What do you let's talk a little bit about personal branding and how important is that for someone? That's something I've seen myself shying away from more and more. I don't really post on it. I for a while I convinced myself like I need Instagram to get jobs, and Jake and I talked about that a little bit, where Jake's like, I only came on Instagram because I was convinced that I needed to have something up there to land jobs. And I think a lot of social media has lost its joy with the self-branding movement and influencers, at least for me. Like the fun Wild West internet feels like it's gotten a little too tamed and a little too commercialized. But how do you see any benefit in having your Instagram be your portfolio? I know some people say you kind of have to.
I think for a long time, I thought my Instagram was my portfolio, and I only posted things that I thought related. So my Instagram is skate_camera. And I thought for the longest time, like, oh, I have to post photos of my friends skateboarding. Like, and I chose that Instagram name so people would know exactly what I was about from this time that they saw my Instagram.
You're coming here for skate photography.
Yeah, but for now, it's really just creative expression. Like if I shoot something and I want to share it with everyone, I'll put it on my Instagram. I honestly think like I'm going through a change right now. I think we're all consistently changing. But for right now, I'm seeing like things that I'm really passionate about and trying to push myself towards those. So my Instagram will always be a thing. But right now, I'm kind of, so I am starting a production company, and I really want this production company to be about nonprofits and telling people stories in a non-patronizing way. So I'm not going to put that on my own Instagram. I'm going to create an Instagram for this brand,
Right.
and I'm going to post everything on there that relates.
Mm-hmm.
So if I decide to post a photo of my wife or my dogs or whatever food I'm making that day, it's not a huge deal.
Yeah. How do you feel about because Jake kind of expressed how consuming so much between Instagram and Vimeo can almost be crippling sometimes, to the point where you are just constantly feeling either jealous or inferior, or even like maybe a little bit annoyed at people for making things better or succeeding, and like, oh man, they landed that, or holy crap, that's good, I'm not going to be able to make anything like that for a long time. How do you feel like that plays into how you consume things now, and how does that affect like your mental health as you create things?
Yeah, so
I think you can definitely, a lot of people can over consume to the point of making themselves
I think
miserable.
Consumption and the comparison trap are two separate things for me. So as it relates to consumption, I have to limit myself with what I watch and what I listen to and things like that, because I want to be influenced by it, but I want to be influenced by my own thoughts more than I am other people's content. So I have to know, like, okay, I'm like so deep in this guy's Instagram right now. I need to like stop looking at these photos, or I've been on YouTube for an hour and a half today. I should probably just like chill on that. You really need to, I think you should consume every day, and you should consume content, and you should explain to yourself why you like that content. You should be able to verbalize that, but there needs to be a limit on that. But as it relates to the comparison trap, I think we all want to stay relevant. Like, even if I'm shooting like a quick little thing, I'll snap a photo of it for behind the scenes and put it on my Instagram, because it's like, I want people to know that I'm working today, and I want people to know that like I'm in high demand, and that
I'm on set today.
yeah,
guys.
I want people to see this cool camera rig that I'm working on, or like, look at all these lights I have set up.
Yeah.
I want people to perceive me as a certain way. But when I see people working on Instagram, I don't think I've ever felt bad about that. I definitely like seeing people working and doing what they want to do. But there have been times where I'm like sitting on my couch or like editing some thing that I don't love, and then I see someone's working on a really cool shoot, and I'm like, man, am I on the right path right now? Like, do I need to change up what I'm doing right now so I can work on like an Alexa or something like that?
Dude, I'm not shooting on a Mini this weekend. What am I doing?
Yeah, I'm blowing it. I'm shooting on a Sony and not an Ari. But I think everyone has those days. Like, you can't kid yourself. People that are shooting on an Ari aren't shooting on an Ari every day.
No.
And they're shooting like the boring commercials and the boring social media stuff.
And is that what you want to be doing? Like, do you want to be making a Coke Instagram ad, or do you want to be, doing whatever you're doing on your Sony? Which one's more fulfilling for you?
Yeah, I think it's funny you mentioned that like consumption thing too, because I've been thinking a lot about, just as a consumer, I feel like I'm on high alert now. Like, my BS meter is very high. So when I see fashion photography, which I used to be very interested in, or like certain type of video advertisements, I'm really turned off to that now, because I've taught myself as a consumer I don't like those things. So now when I see someone making a commercial for like some stupid thing, or like some whatever thing that I know doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, I'm like, good for them, but they're not really making a difference. They're not changing anyone's lives. They're not really pushing themselves creatively. They're just making a car look cool and sexy. And like, is that really what I'm about?
Yeah.
And I think some people, they love being able to pride themselves on how great they made something look, and maybe how great they made someone want to buy a product.
If visual execution is like your main passion, and you can like, I made that to the pixel, the best thing that's the best that car has ever looked to the pixel, or that's the best that ice cream has ever looked, or I made that oil company look really cool. But
I guess my personal brand, what I've been feeling a lot lately is I don't really care about that. Like, I think product shouldn't be the end all be all. I think we should be celebrating stories, even brand stories, and we should be talking about what's making the world better instead of just throwing more crap out into it. Like
kind of like those REI series that they've been doing.
Yeah, like REI and Yeti, and even a lot of like cell phone commercials, I think is a good example. We're slowly seeing them going away from look how great this phone is and look how sleek it is to I think it was a Super Bowl commercial where they had the first responders and they just threw a Verizon logo at the end of it. That doesn't really tell you anything about their brand, but it makes you associate them with like something great and heroic. And I love that so much more, like celebrating first responders. That would be way more of a fulfilling job for me than like I took this phone into the studio and made it look amazing.
Right.
And I think there is a time and place for that, but I really am just trying to get myself out of making people want to buy things.
Yeah.
Because I myself can't get on board with buying something all the time.
Yeah, definitely. So let me run this by you. I was talking about this with my wife actually just a few hours ago. And I think this applies to us in a lot of ways, but she's been having to read again a lot for a new class that she's teaching, and she's in the middle of doing her doctorate. So she feels pretty burnt out because she's constantly doing analysis and critique. And she was just reading to write reading notes for her students, and she was like, called me and she's like, I need to read more. Like when I read and I just read, I feel more fulfilled and I'm willing to like acknowledge something that I enjoy as a beautiful thing. And when I'm not reading it to critique it, I'm not sitting there like trying to pick every word apart for a dissertation, I get much more enjoyment out of. And I think for us specifically as like video and visuals people, you can get to the point where you ruin the medium that you fell in love with for yourself because you're constantly analyzing it. And I think that's an interesting idea to like try to recapture what made you like that in the first place and maybe try to force yourself to just watch movies for fun or just, you know.
Yeah, I have to go through phases.
Back into that medium. And I go in phases in a big time.
I have to push myself through phases and able to in order to like keep myself like just juiced up creatively. So I might shoot a few rolls of film in 1 month. Might be really into like shooting still photos. Might go out and shoot skateboarding. I might go on a hike and take photos. I might write something. I might go in the studio. Like I can't do the same thing over and over again. And even on the consumption side, in order to not ruin it, I might watch things that I know aren't like the best, like they're not the award-winning things, but I just love seeing an artist's voice come out. And like something may not look the best or sound the best, but you have to push that aside and just celebrate what someone created and celebrate the fact that you're able to watch it.
Yeah. I mean, I see that. I definitely have done that for myself with music. I don't think I've completely found that balance for myself with, especially with movies. I think I've lost a lot of my drive to watch movies that I need to. Like and I think a part of it is I did it to myself. Like I would have my list of shame every year of like movies that I knew were going to get a lot of nominations or like going to make it to Sundance or something that I was like, man, I need to see these because I know everybody's going to see these. And then I would just never watch anything. Like this last year, I probably saw 2 movies in the theater, and I didn't watch hardly anything. I watched like mostly either movies I've already seen or nothing, and just like crappy Netflix TV shows. But with music, I've been able to like unplug and acknowledge that, like, you know, I like a lot of indie music and I like a lot of stuff that I wanted to like in college because I was in LA and it was cool. But also like I stopped listening to hardcore music because I thought it was like too tooly, and I just kind of force myself to consume things that were the better thing, giant air quotes, but my personal preference and what like gave me a little bit of creative juice was not always that. And being willing to like reinsert that into your life can definitely be just give your brain a little bit more of an enjoyable experience when you're trying to like put yourself into a more healthy creative mindset. I think you kind of can deprive yourself and just only fill your brain with what everyone else says is the best stuff, and maybe not just the stuff that you want to watch. And there's a balance. Like you said, it bobs and weaves, it ebbs and flows.
Yeah, I think you have to, I guess if you want to stay relevant and you just want to stay in conversation, you should probably watch the big things. like the Oscar nominated movies or whatever, because you're going to be asked to work on something like that in a couple of years from now, because that's going to be on trend for like a long time.
Right.
So you should probably like watch it, see what the hype is about. But I also think I gain a lot of value from watching like the weird thing on Netflix, or like finding some weird Vimeo short and watching those things that like no one is watching.
Yeah.
Like if I see something I'm enjoying and I see that it only has like maybe a couple thousand views on YouTube or Vimeo, that's a lot for Vimeo, but I kind of take pride in that. I'm like, okay, cool. This is like someone's weird thing. Obviously they didn't care about the views. They didn't care about like probably getting it in any festivals. They're just putting it online and like, let me see what they're doing. And I want to just see an independent artist take on like a creative idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think about the movies that I've enjoyed the most are the ones that I see the trailer or I hear about it and I get excited about it, and I don't let hype or anti-hype affect how I feel about it. And a lot of those end up going down in the ones that I end up rewatching all the time, or I actually buy a Blu-ray of, which I don't even have a Blu-ray player. I don't know why I buy them, but
yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to touch on one more thing a little bit. Well, I had you here because we both have similar taste in YouTube.
Okay.
We
do.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the influx of YouTube filmmakers and how I think we're kind of seeing a trend where you have a really talented YouTube filmmaker come up and be a very like helpful personality, and where there's a lot of tutorial content and a lot of just like generally helpful learning based things. And as they become more popular as a personality, it turns into a little bit more of a self-helpy or like hype beastie Casey Neistat clone. And I know not even necessarily having to name like any specific channels, but I want to talk about like a little bit of the cult of needing to be an influencer personality and how that can even like take away some of our best content.
Yeah, I think there's probably a few different types of people that find themselves in that position.
Yeah.
If you're a photographer or filmmaker, just creative, and you have a YouTube channel and you're talking about creativity and video, I think if you're a veteran, you're going to get really bored of that. And I think you're like, I can't make another video about whatever camera that came out or whatever lights.
Yeah, fair
You know
enough.
what I mean? Like you want to push yourself further. And then I also think there are people that are finally understanding what type of platform that they have, because when you have a couple thousand subscribers, you can kind of say whatever you want and you're understanding that it doesn't hold as much weight. But when you're pushing like maybe a quarter, 500,000 or 1 million subscribers, you're like, there's a lot of people listening to what I have to say right now. Maybe I should try to make it hold some value instead of just doing an unboxing of a camera lens. And I think there's another side of people too, that they might be a filmmaker or creative person, but there's something deep down that really drives them. Like maybe they're really interested in personal goals and that's what keeps them going. Or maybe they're actually really interested in health or the outdoors. I don't think there's anything negative personally about talking about what you're interested in.
Yeah.
Your Skillshare or whoever your sponsor is for that video might think otherwise.
Yeah.
And the subscribers you lose might think otherwise. But if that keeps you from getting burned out, because you think like the last thing someone wants to do is do another unboxing of another camera body and tell people what they think about it. If they can like,
or talk about how to use like the eye line for the 15th time in a video.
If they can make one video a month about their workout routine and it's kind of weird for them, but they enjoy it, I want to celebrate that.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, I don't know. I'm very optimistic, and I'm not the type of person that wants to hate on everything like most people are on YouTube, so I might be a little bit different.
No, and I definitely have to catch myself on that sometimes, like being too cynical with my consumption and being like, oh man, they blew up and now they suck.
But there's definitely the YouTuber like paradigm where like you start posting videos, you become something and people tell you that you're something, and you start speaking at events about like self-help stuff, And it's like, man, I know that's not what you're really passionate about because you've never talked about it before.
Right.
In 5 years of
That's
making
such a
YouTube
drastic
videos,
turn.
you know what I mean? Like, I know that's not really what's keeping you going. I think that is maybe on trend right now. Like, you'll see, I watched something the other day about wanting to be different creatively, and the writer was talking about like hair bands in the 80s, and that every band was a hair band in the late 80s, and how many can you name? You know what I mean? Like, they're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at a band, like, I think they used the Police as an example. They were using sounds that they were different. Their message was a little bit different, and they weren't the loudest voice back then, but they're still relevant now,
Right.
30 years later. And I think there are those YouTubers that are still going to be shining in 10 years where it's like, man, they stayed relevant and they stayed with their message and they didn't try to be anyone that they weren't.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I think those people, you know, I think of like Mango Street, I think is a really good example of that, as they like know what they are and they don't seem to overreach very often. If at all, that I can really remember. Honestly, they've really found their niche and what they can hit, and it doesn't feel like the more attention has made them shift away from what their original intent and message was with what they're doing. And I think you can get more creative with that content too, and think of like more fun ways to do it. Like there's this graphic design kid whose name I'm totally forgetting, who has a really funny channel where it's him sitting at his computer, kind of a lot like the beginning of like a Matt D'Avella video or something, like no angle changes, just him and a screen capture. And he'll do a series where people send in their logo projects and he'll fix them.
Oh, yeah. I know who you're talking about. I can't remember his name.
I can't think of that. But I'm like, that is one of the like examples I always think of like, he's being funny. He likes being funny, but he's actually giving really good advice while he's being funny. And it's original enough that it keeps me wanting to come back and watch it every once in a while, even though I don't really do graphics that much anymore. It's definitely something that I usually end up having other people do for me, but I'm like, oh man, I used to do this stuff all the time. And also like, this kid's really talented, but also really funny. And you can find a way to have, you know, educational tutorial-ish content, but in a way that's maybe more enjoyable for you to make or differentiates you from other people without having to become like an airy, like Gorilla Pod vlogger about it, which sounds cynical, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Like, I think there are Gorilla Pod is hard to say, vloggers out there that are really talented and fun to watch, and I still watch some of them, but I think you can maybe strive to not let yourself fall into that trap. And also, not everyone needs a YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's funny you just said that, because I feel like you and I can sit around and talk about it all day about YouTube, because we are consumers of YouTube.
Big time.
And I can tell you what I don't like and what turns me off, and then I can also tell you what I'm drawn towards.
Yeah.
But very few times have I put myself on camera and posted it on YouTube, and even then I've deleted some of them.
Oh,
like,
yeah, I've tried
I'm
multiple
not
times,
trying to
terrible
be a YouTuber.
Nope.
But I think as a creator, you have to understand what that world is, because that's what you're competing with.
Yeah.
Like when
really.
you're working on a movie or a TV show or something, you have to understand that you're going to get as much views, or you're competing for views with some kid in his bedroom making a video game movie.
You're competing
you know what I mean?
against the Paul brothers right
Yeah.
now, basically.
Or it's like the fact that someone can like Casey Neistat can have, I don't know, probably like 10 million subs or something like that.
I don't know even anymore, but a lot.
He has more publishing power and more viewers than most primetime television shows. Think about that. And think about all the money that goes into primetime television. I'm not saying that YouTube's ever going to kill traditional movies or television.
No, yeah.
I'm just saying that every year it's going to compete with it more and more.
Yeah.
And you have to be aware of what's happening online, and you have to be aware of how people are learning to consume content.
Yeah.
Because now kids have their phones and their iPads and that's what they're consuming more than they're on TV. It used to be the other way around, where you would watch TV movies, you might hop online for like a few minutes every day, but now it's the other way around. I might turn on the TV for a little bit.
Yeah.
You would see what's on prime time, but I am on my phone 5 hours a day. I'm not watching TV 5 hours a day.
The only time I'm really not watching probably a digital medium version of the thing is for like The Bachelor every week that I watch with all my wife's friends. Like I can't think of any other like Netflix would be the closest to like a traditional TV show that I watch. Like I do not tune into prime time unless it's something that I really want to see anymore. If there's like a new documentary out or a new series that I'm like, okay, I really want to watch that, but I don't like lazily flip over to ABC. I go through and get down a 15 video rabbit hole on YouTube or get like 20 million tweets deep on Twitter.
Does that change the way you create content?
I mean, I think having an understanding of that stuff's going to be, there's less of a barrier between the creator and the consumer now. And so I think at least having an understanding of that can help you better serve, you know, if you're doing client work, better serve client work. If you're making original content, it can help you just be more mindful of your audience. There's a lot less gatekeepers now. And I think that's one thing that is taking big media longer to catch up with and understand why these things are blowing up so quickly is because you can make something much more personal and get it out much faster and get it to more eyes more quickly. And so I think it's always good to at least, like you said, be plugged in and knowledgeable of how that's being shaped, even if it's not like, I'm not trying to be Peter McKinnon, but understanding why that's doing well can be valuable. And that can affect how you, you know, approach what you're making when you have a better understanding of the medium that it's being put onto.
Yeah, well, how I see that now kind of translating is we're seeing brands that they're not putting millions of dollars towards TV commercials anymore. They might be putting a couple $1,000s here and there to creators on YouTube or Instagram. It's like they're shotgunning their marketing. It's not like more brands these days, I'm sure, would rather have a viral video than a Super Bowl commercial.
Probably.
Because they understand the power and the speed at which it travels.
Yeah.
And I'm even seeing brands where they're going to small independent creators in order to tap into their market fully.
Yeah, think about like Hint Water with all the YouTubers that they hit. Like I've never seen a commercial for Hint ever, but I know what Hint is because they've been in the background of probably 15 different people that I watch on YouTube. And some of them will probably only have like 20,000
because you're their target demo. They want to sell to people just like you that are watching that person's videos.
And you have that, you know, which for better or for worse, you have that more direct connection to that now. And especially with all the information that they have on us now too, they can really niche pick. Like I want 18 to 35-year-old dudes that are into cameras and music and really like watching YouTube and Twitter as their main form of, you know, ingestion of media. And you can do that now pretty easily. And some services with even more like painfully accurate, you know, narrow spread.
I think there are brands that are doing a good job of figuring out the new platform of advertising. And I think there are brands that are still just betting on putting things on a Super Bowl commercial or national TV, and they're thinking that's going to do them well. And maybe it might, but I think if you want to have a small brand and grow it, and not try to be a multi-billion-dollar corporation, that's the way you need to do it these days. Is you have to go to these small independent creators that have a following, and you have to tap into their target demo. You have to let them tap into their demo for you.
Yeah.
Because like spending $20 million on like TV ads and stuff like that, you're covering a wider spread, but I don't think you're being as personable.
Yeah, I think that's too like. It's really easy to come across as disingenuous. I think about like creators online have a very like loyal fan base typically. Even if it's a toxic fan base, they have a very loyal fan base. And they're there because of the community that group or that person has built outside of the content even. Like the community is a big part that I think a lot of brands don't understand. And so I think like must have been like a year ago now when SourceFed, the YouTube channel, went under and their company sold them off, and another company just bought the channel. And I don't know if you were around for any of that.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So SourceFed is Philip DeFranco's channel that he started when he first got a bunch of YouTube funding, and it was like news delivered white wall, but like comedic, and they had a lot of big personalities, and it was pretty popular, and it had gone down over the years, and they got bought out by Discovery at some point, and it went down. But another more clickbaity Facebooky company basically bought the channel and just started uploading videos to it under their new brand. Like they just changed it to Now This News or something like that.
Oh yeah, have heard of that with
So
the
they
yellow
bought,
and
like,
black logo.
They bought a multiple million subscriber channel basically, and instead of just holding on to it to make the ad revenue off the archive or something like that, they're like, oh, well, we've got these 2 million subscribers that we can just start putting out videos to do. Now This Nerd, that's what it was. It was Now This Nerd. So they took over the SourceFed Nerd channel, which was their like comic booky video gamey channel. And they just started uploading content, and people lost their freaking minds. Like they were like, I think they had 250,000 people under subscribe in one day or something like that. Like there was a push to get them under 1 million again. And people, which, you know, whatever, toxic internet.
Yeah.
But also, like, I think that speaks to how, as brands realize more and more how big of a deal it is that, like, this is a community built around what this is. It's not built around just the fact that there's a bunch of people here, which I think with TV, it's just like, there's 50 million people there, and there's these target demographics, so just spray it out there.
Yeah.
But with it, like a YouTube channel or a Twitter account, they're there for that.
That person or that thing.
They're not just a large mass of people that you're going to shotgun. You know, you have to actually cater to what that was. And I think, yeah, they did end up putting all the YouTube videos back off private and deleted all their videos and basically apologized and went and made their own channel, which is, I don't know how it's doing, but I think that's a lesson in big media not necessarily understanding how like personality and community based social content is right now. And I think that's why you're seeing more people feeling comfortable spending time I think jumping into YouTube versus watching, you know, ABC.
I think that's a good lesson in online marketing, that money isn't power anymore, or even I guess on that platform, where it's like if you have all the money but you can't figure out how to connect with an audience a specific way, then you're irrelevant. Right. You're just spam. And there are brands that have figured out how they can talk to people and create a community around the one thing, and they're doing extremely well with maybe less money than a bigger company. Yeah.
Okay, well, that was a little bit of a rabbit hole. We got a little bit far down there. I think we're kind of getting low on time, but do you want to plug anything? Instagram, Vimeo page, up and comings?
Yeah, Instagram, skate_camera. You can shoot me a DM or something like that.
Slide into the DMs.
Yeah, I mean, you can shoot them, you can slide into them, you can whatever.
You can dab on
them. If it was a month from now, there's something I would want to plug. But follow me on Instagram, and then you'll see what I'm plugging. How about that?
Yeah, there you go. Follow Daniel on Instagram for more stuff to come. If I'm not lazy, I'll go back and put the new thing in the show notes a month from now.
And if you're listening to this, shoot Seth a DM. Tell him you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Follow me on Twitter, too, at Seth Pipe, and that's also my Instagram. But I'm not very good at updating Instagram. I'm not great at updating Twitter either. I'm kind of taking a little bit of a social media break.
He's not good at admin stuff. We know that now.
Amen. So, all right. Thanks for being on, Daniel.
Thank you, Seth.
And, all right. That's it.
Peace out.
Peace. All right. Thanks again to Daniel for being on. Be sure to follow him on Instagram. And thank you guys for listening. Please feel free to leave a review or a comment. I would love to hear more about what you think of the show, what we'd like to see done differently. Always up for constructive criticism. And we will be back with another episode next week. Thanks.